She pushed the shopping cart through the narrow aisle, her baby cradled in one arm. The other hand guided the cart, wobbly with the weight of a single carton of baby formula. Her eyes darted at every shelf, weighing options, calculating, maybe a smaller size, maybe a discount brand. But the infant cried, and she knew she had no choice. At the checkout, the line crawled forward. She tried not to draw attention to herself. Her clothes were simple, worn but clean. Her cheeks were hollowed by sleepless nights. Her hair was pulled back crudely. In her mind, a spiral of fear. Will I have enough? What if the cashier refuses me? What if someone judges me? When it was her turn, she placed the carton gently on the conveyor belt. The cashier rang it up, the display showing the price, more than she currently carried. The baby's cries grew louder, a piercing reminder of urgency. Her fingers trembled as she reached into her small purse, pulling out coins and a few crumpled bills. She counted them slowly, carefully. They fell short. She closed her lips, swallowed hard. Then, as though compelled by some shielded dignity, she removed the carton from the belt and placed it back on the shelf. She tried to steady her voice as she said, "I'm sorry. I can't." She glanced at the cashier, flushed with shame, then turned and fled the store, the baby in her arms. As she exited, she didn't see the man behind her in the queue. She didn't know he had watched every moment, had seen the exact tally in her hands, the sharp intake of her breath, the refusal and return of the milk. He was known broadly, though many did not know him personally. Adrian Rhodes, technology magnate, philanthropist, one of the wealthiest men in the country. He had made his billions in software and AI, then invested heavily in global health and education causes. He was generous in public, giving to causes, endowing schools, funding social projects. But he was also private, guarded, and had learned through life not to trust offers that seemed sudden or sentimental. On that ordinary day, Adrian had slipped out of his luxury car to pick up a few groceries at a local upscale supermarket. He liked anonymity sometimes, to breathe, but he didn't expect to witness what unfolded, not in a place he frequented. He noticed the young mother as she entered, frail, despondent. When she approached the counter and returned the baby milk, his impulse was immediate. He stepped forward, pulling from his pocket his business card. Not the sort of card one uses to ask favors, Adrian Rhodes, Rhodes Foundation. He asked the cashier, quietly, "Hold that carton for me, I'll pay for it." The cashier nodded, uncertain what to make of this well-dressed stranger. He turned to the woman, now leaning against her cart, cradling the baby, head bowed. He said, in a soft voice, "Excuse me, miss." She jumped, startled, tears in her eyes. "Buy that formula," Adrian said. "And more, if you need it." He handed her his card and a debit slip. "Come with me outside." She followed him, numb with confusion. Outside, he paused, asked her name, Isabel, and asked about the child, a little girl named Sophia. He learned she was recently widowed, with no family support, scraping by as a cleaner and part-time nanny. She juggled shifts so she could care for Sophia. The months had been brutal. Late rent, skipping meals, hoping next week would be better. He heard her voice break when she spoke of nights she'd skipped sleep so the baby could eat. He saw the guilt in her eyes. He said bluntly, "No more of this." He arranged for her immediate groceries to be delivered weekly, paid off her outstanding rent, enrolled her in a support program. But he also did something unexpected. He offered her a job at one of his Foundation's community centers, to manage outreach work. It paid well, with benefits, and would give her both a stable income and dignity of work. He told her, "You are not charity. You are someone with talent, effort, and heart. Let me help you build forward." That gesture went public in small circles but soon spread via social media. The narrative struck many as a cliché, rich man saves poor mom, and some cried that it was patronizing. But what few knew was the deeper history behind it. Adrian had come from nothing. In his early years, his mother had died. His father, an occasional gambler, had disappeared when Adrian was 14. A neighbor family had taken him in for periods, then he moved between shelters and odd jobs. He learned early the sting of poverty, the indignities, the ways people avert their eyes. As he climbed his way into the world of business, he vowed quietly that if he ever had power, he would do more than write checks. He would reach across shame, reach into people's lives and pull them forward. But as his foundation grew, he also hardened, learning about scams, learning about people who sought handouts, learning about pitfalls in mixing charity with personal rescue. So when he saw Isabel return the milk, his instinct was complicated: help, yes, but carefully. He had first asked for her authorization before intervening. He didn't want a public spectacle, didn't want more shame on her. He simply said, "If you accept help, I'll support you, but no headlines, no stories without your permission." Isabel had trembled, reluctant. She didn't want pity, so he gently insisted, "You're not a story. You're a human being." Eventually, she accepted, and he insisted that the support be structured: education assistance, childcare, work training, psychological counsel. He didn't want her to remain dependent. Still, the public perception solidified. Social media lit up with tales. Rich CEO sees poor mom returning baby milk, rescues her life. Some called it PR stunt, others praised him. Some even speculated, what if this is orchestrated attention, just a hero act? Adrian, accustomed to critique, stayed silent. Weeks passed. Isabel's life began to shift slowly. She received groceries, could breathe more easily knowing rent was covered for now, and began her training program at one of Rhodes Foundation's centers. She learned administrative skills, counseling techniques, community outreach. Her self-confidence, once fragile, began to reawaken. At the community center, she encountered other mothers in struggle. She listened to their stories. She became an advocate, a voice. She remembered the shame she had felt in that supermarket, and resolved she'd never let someone else feel that way in her presence. One evening, a gala for Rhodes Foundation was held. Guests mingled: donors, dignitaries, cultural icons. Adrian told the event's organizers he wished to surprise someone that night. At the climax, he called out, "I'd like to introduce someone very special, someone I believe exemplifies resilience and grace." Isabel was brought forward, uncertain, shy, stunned. The audience applauded. A spotlight shone. On that stage, she described in a few trembling words her journey, the moments she considered giving up, the nights she feared she would fail her child. Afterwards, the press swarmed. The narrative was now public. Photographers asked questions. People exclaimed about the power of the gesture, the generosity. But Isabel, now more grounded, insisted, "This is not a one-time story. It's a start, and I want to help others, too." Adrian quietly told reporters, "Not today, no more despair." That phrase ran across news feeds and banners. Many latched onto it. It sounded like a slogan. But for him, it was a boundary. Not today, we don't let someone's dignity be broken. Yet beneath that public gesture was complexity. Some critics questioned, what about invisible others, those he had not rescued? Isn't it unfair that one lucky face is elevated? Some charities maintain that no amount of generosity fixes systemic inequality. Some wondered whether he should instead invest in structural change, in policy, in reducing poverty at root. Adrian welcomed discussion. He directed part of his foundation's funds to systemic programs, microloans, education reform, healthcare access, community development. But he also believed in the vertical lift, that saving one life well could ripple further, and that dignity matters. A year later, reporter interviews revealed that Isabel was thriving. She managed a counseling team for mothers, oversaw food banks, and enrolled part-time in schooling for social work. Sophia bloomed, healthy and energetic. The supermarket where she had first returned the milk now had a mural in its lobby, commissioned by Rhodes Foundation, depicting a mother sheltering a child, with the phrase, "Not today, hope prevails." The management said they had quietly donated to local food banks thereafter. Still, the memory haunted Isabel. She recalled the tight grip of shame, the humiliation of returning that carton, the grinding fear. She fought those ghosts in therapy. But she also learned to reclaim the moment, to say, when needed, "Not today, I will not be broken." In quiet conversations, Adrian shared with his board, "I never want to patronize rescue. I don't want to be a showman. But I believe that sometimes the universe gives you a moment to stand between a person and despair. And you take it." Some board members had bristled. "What about scale, risk, overhead?" He replied, "Scale matters, but so does soul." Their bond became one of mutual respect. He remained distant, a figure behind scenes. She became a frontline leader in one wing of the foundation. Over time, she visited many towns, telling her story before small crowds, not as a spectacle, but as a mirror. She ended each talk by saying, "If you see someone returning their dignity, offer to hold it for them, not forever, but until they can stand again." Her story inspired others. Volunteers wrote letters. Other philanthropists strengthened safety nets. Policy advocates cited the milk moment as emblematic, when society fails mothers, children, the vulnerable. Yet the biggest transformation, for both, was personal. Adrian reckoned with his own past, the years he had hidden, ashamed, fearful, and allowed himself vulnerability. He visited marginalized neighborhoods not as a donor, but as a listener. He questioned his assumptions. Isabel learned boundaries, strength, forgiveness. The moment of that returned milk remained a pivot point. Not because it was the only act, but because it encapsulated the shame, the fragility, the strength, the possibility. That a tiny action, returning one carton, could ripple outward, challenging people's notions of help, dignity, power. At times in interviews, people pressed, why didn't he just donate cash? Why the drama? Adrian answered, sometimes what matters is presence. Sometimes someone has to step into shame and say, not today. Not today, that person's dignity is not forfeit. Over time, that phrase, not today, became quietly powerful among those who heard it. In the end, the story is not about a billionaire and a helpless mom. It's about dignity, the quiet necessity of stepping in, the complexity of aid, and the fragile bridges between privilege and vulnerability. It's about how one moment can break or redeem, and that sometimes, life offers a chance to refuse despair, not today, not on my watch. She stood in the aisle, baby cradled to her chest, the formula can in her trembling hand. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, the hum of the store, the beeps of scanners and soft footsteps, all of it blurred as her chest tightened. She couldn't meet anyone's eyes. She had done the math already. She counted quietly. Coins, bills, the small stipend she got for her part-time cleaning job. Just short, by several rupees, maybe enough to buy bread, maybe a tin of cheaper milk powder, but nothing that would fully feed her infant. She paused before the checkout conveyor. Her fingers closed tightly around the can. The baby cried, a tiny wail that punctured her hesitation. She swallowed, tried to steady herself. The line advanced. She placed the can on the belt. The cashier rang it up. Numbers glowed on the digital display, higher than she'd expected. She froze. She reached into her purse but only found rusted coins, a crumpled note. She closed her eyes, shut out the murmurs around her. Her throat constricted. With a hurried motion, careful not to draw attention, she lifted the can again and gently placed it back on the shelf. Then with flush on her face, she muttered, I'm sorry, I can't take it. She pushed past with the baby in one arm and left the store without looking back. Outside, rain had started, soft drizzle that mingled with her tears. She moved hurriedly, covering Sophia in her shawl, trying to hide the tremor in her limbs. She whispered apologies to her child, heartbreak heavy in her back. She didn't notice the man behind her. He had been standing in line, waiting for his own items. He saw the whole sequence. The attempt, the calculation, the return, the departure. He watched her leave before he moved toward the shelf and picked up the can she had abandoned. He took it to the cashier and paid. His name was Adrian Rhodes. In every press clipping, he was labeled, the tech billionaire philanthropist. But today, just a stranger in a grocery store, watching a moment unfold that would rattle him deeply. He left his own groceries and followed her outside, keeping a discreet distance. He watched as she headed down the rain-slick street, the baby pressed close, her steps hurried and small. He halted before deciding to catch up, but paused, uncertain. He worried. Would she see him? Would she run? He waited, watched her duck under an overhang, try to gather herself, steady her breathing. He cleared his throat and called, softly, Miss, excuse me. She jumped, turned, eyes wide with fear and fatigue. You dropped this, he said, holding out the can of milk. Her eyes flicked from him to the can, then down to her hands. She recoiled slightly, instinctively. No, that's not, I can't. He held up a hand, gentle. Let me buy it, for both of you. She stared at him, a suited man, umbrella over his head, wet droplets on his collar. Something in his voice was calm, firm but kind. Please, he said, not today, let me help. She hesitated, heart hammering. She had always believed pride should carry her through. But now, in that rain, she felt empty. She nodded, voice caught, thank you. He handed her a card and said, if you ever want help, groceries, rent, schooling, come see me. I run a foundation. I want you not to survive, but to thrive. She clasped the card, lips trembling. She barely managed to whisper, I don't know what to say. He nodded and turned away, giving her space. She watched him retreat into the drizzle, clutching the card in one hand, the baby in another. The days afterward were surreal. She waited, unsure whether to open the card, whether she could even trust it. But the card bore a name, Adrian Rhodes, of Rhodes Foundation, a number, an address. She dared to call. He answered on the second ring. He listened as she stuttered through her story, all of it, how she struggled, how she nearly returned that milk, how shame had pushed her back. He didn't interrupt. He asked, would you let me help, not as charity, but as someone who believes in you? She let tears come. He arranged a meeting at his foundation's local center, not in his mansion, not somewhere intimidating, but a modest office in a community building. He introduced her to staff, resources, a social worker, a stipend to tide her over, a plan. He proposed that she begin training in community outreach, counseling, perhaps become a liaison for other struggling mothers. Something with purpose, something she could build. She balked at first. She said she was not suitable, that she was broken, that her shame was her own. He replied, everyone is broken sometimes. I'm offering you a chance to heal, through work, through support, not to be a symbol, but to be a person. She accepted, slowly. During that first week, Adrian visited incognito a few times, sometimes in the corner of the meeting room, sometimes passing by, reluctant to dominate. She worked. Inventory of food supplies, talking with mothers, organizing meal distributions. She surprised herself with small wins, a mother who cried and hugged her, a child fed, a note of thanks. He didn't intervene publicly. He didn't issue statements. He insisted all announcements be made only when she was ready. He often told staff, we serve people, not headlines. Still, word leaked. Someone snapped a photo of her with a baby in her arms in one distribution event, captioned, the woman who returned milk, now helping others. It circulated quietly in local social media groups. Many praised, others criticized. Look at him playing savior, where were you before? She hated being a story. She hated that her most humiliating moment had become public. She confronted Adrian, I don't want this to turn into spectacle. He agreed. He asked for her permission before any public mention. He apologized for anything beyond her comfort. He reminded her, your voice matters, but not at the cost of your dignity. Over time, she grew stronger. She enrolled for evening courses in social work, with the foundation's scholarship. She mentored other mothers. She visited neighborhoods, hearing painful tales, helping link people to resources. She was still fragile at times, nightmares, guilt, but she had purpose. And Adrian watched quietly. He didn't micromanage. He intervened when needed. He challenged his own belief that philanthropy must be big. He learned how to attach his privilege to someone's dignity, not overshadow it. They built trust. She talked about her late husband, about nights she cried silently, about how she had believed there was no way forward. He listened, deeply. He shared parts of his own past. The orphanage, the nights he had nothing, the hunger. He never flaunted his wealth. Instead, he revealed that pain and ambition had twisted him, made him guard his heart. One day she found his file on her case, long, careful, with margins of notes, ensure this is sustainable, avoid dependency, provide empowerment. She realized he agreed with her discomfort about charity. She began to see him less as a distant rescuer and more as a flawed ally. She saw his tension when press tried to corner him, his frustration when someone trivialized her. She felt his admiration, but also his fear that he would fail her, fear that his intention would be misconstrued. They walked many steps together, tentative, cautious. By the end of part 1, the memory of the returned milk still haunted her. But now she carried it differently, as a hinge point, not a sentence. Adrian watched her rebuild, and quietly vowed, not today, not on my watch, I will not let shame drown a life.